Hello and welcome to the official episode 1 of the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token podcast.
It's the official first episode.
It's official. We did make an episode 0, but this is officially where it begins.
That wasn't official. It hadn't been notarized.
You can still listen to it.
Yeah.
It's alright.
Yeah. It's like,
right.
eating a knockoff penguin.
A knockoff penguin?
Aye, rather than a real
I'm assuming
penguin.
you mean the chocolate
Aye.
biscuit.
Well, yeah. Nobody makes knockoff actual penguins. No guy's coming up to you in the street and going, "Here, mate, draw a penguin," and then you get it home and you're like, "Sake, this guy sold me a crap penguin."
Well, that's very true. Alright, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Chris, and my co-host here, who should be sitting to my left.
You're sitting to my right though, Chris.
That's
more what concerns me. My name's Euan.
Yep, that's Euan. He's the class clown. This is a podcast about board games and video games and other general gaming, which we will include later on. At the moment, we are mainly focusing on board games and video games. My personal history, I've been playing video games from a very young age, Euan. Very, very young. We owned a ZX Spectrum in my house. That's proper 80s stuff.
Every time I mention an obscure console, you generally have played it or have owned it at some point. It's
the ZX Spectrum and an Atari 2600, I think it was. I think that's my earliest gaming. There was a game on the Atari called Pressure Cooker, which was one of my favourites. Euan.
Are we going to go back to retro gaming straight from the get go?
No, I'm just trying to set up a bit of history.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I would like to cover Atari Memories at some point.
Atari Memories.
Well, my earliest console, I think, was a Super Nintendo.
That's pretty late.
I was a late comer to the. My parents didn't believe in computer games.
Work of the devil, mate.
Yeah. They were all.
Get outside.
You get those Nintendo systems, and they had pentagrams.
Oh yeah,
painted on the top of them.
I think Nintendo discontinued those after a while.
Well, they realised that wasn't working in the European market. It's all right in Japan, but I'm definitely not as prolific a gamer as yourself, but I enjoy being railroaded through various computer games and board games by my friends.
That's true.
I have opinions on them.
You do. You have some very interesting opinions on some of these things, which is why you're here.
Thank you, Chris.
But what about board games? Because I've been buying sort of what I would call proper board games for the past sort of 10 years now. Starting off with, I think the first one I bought was possibly Colosseum, which is still one of my favourite games.
It's one that gets cracked out every so often.
It does.
And by proper board games, we basically mean any game that doesn't feature a combination of dice and metal die-cast figurines in the shape of everyday household items. But I think if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have an idea of that already. But if you came here to get a review on Monopoly, Subutio, although we might cover Subutio.
I pulled
that out there, and that was disrespectful of me, to be perfectly honest.
Take that back.
I'll take that back. I don't know how to say Subutio backwards.
Right. And if you're wondering about the theme tune, that's the one that we pulled from the archives, Euan, isn't it?
We did, yeah. We ransacked the Prelinger archives in America, and we found this curious little ditty from a Super Nintendo title, which I don't know.
I think it was a Nintendo title.
It may have been. It may have gone that far back. There was a lot of obscure stuff in the development of it. I don't think it did too well, but it was called Dr. Dre's Awesome Game.
Yep, Dr. Dre.
It was a tie-in of sorts. I think you went around on a snowmobile, and that was the first. That was the theme. That was Chinatown theme, stroke main menu theme from Dr. Dre's Awsum game.
Yep, it's a classic. Look for it, guys.
Well, yeah, we get that one checked out. It's a bit of gaming history for you, really.
It really is. Okay, so without further ado, let's move on, and we will start with board games, because we started with video games in episode 0.
We did, yeah.
So we'll start with board games this time.
Alternate.
Okay, so the first board game we're going to talk about is Concordia, Euan.
Yes.
It's kind of a strange one. It's a sort of Euro game, but it's a card-driven Euro game. It's got a sort of deck-building mechanic to it. It's set in sort of ancient Rome, the Roman Empire sort of thing. But it comes with this sort of nice big board, which has got the Roman Empire on it, all these different regions that are on it.
It's a lovely map.
It is very nice. And you get these little colonists that all start in Rome. And at the beginning of the game, there's 2 or 3 cities in each region. And they sort of randomly determined what those cities specialise in terms of resources. So you get these 5 resources that are bricks,
food, wine, tools, and silk. Or
cloth. Yeah, that's right. So those are the 5 resources. But it's the cards that really drive this game. So everybody starts the game with the same cards. So you start with something like 7 or 8 cards.
Everybody's deck's identical to
that's it. And every turn, you just play one of your cards and you do what it says on it. And it's actually quite straightforward. So you just play your card, and these cards will let you do different things. So, for example, you get... So, like, the prefect lets you choose a region, and every city in that region will produce the resource that it specialises in, and whoever played the prefect gets a bonus, depending on what region it is. You can also buy more cards, so at the top of the board, you've got some better cards, basically, that are better than the ones that you've got in your hand, and you can pay some resources to get those cards, depending on where they are on that board. Some of your other cards let you buy and sell some of your resources to get some money, or they'll let you move your colonists. And then you've got the Tribune, which is the card that you play that lets you pick up all your cards again, and you get some money when you play the Tribune as well. So the whole thing is just completely driven by these cards. And you got these sort of little colonists that you're moving around on the board, and you have to move them. They sort of sit between the cities and not actually on them.
Yeah.
And you can build, so when you move your guys, you can also build in any cities that they're adjacent to, so you can put a little house in, and then that means that you can then produce the resources in that city. And the thing about this game, I mean, like I say, it's actually fairly simple to play, but there's a whole lot of depth to it. But the thing that's really interesting about it is that those cards that you're playing, they are also what determine your points at the end of the game. So, and they've all got sort of different gods written at the bottom of them. So you've got Jupiter and Mars and that kind of thing, and they'll score you different points. So, like, one of them will be, you get points depending on how many different types of resources you can produce. Yeah. But if you have multiple of that card, it then basically gets multiplied. So if you can produce all 5 of the resources by the end of the game, but you have 5 of the god cards that let you score points for that, you get 5 times 5, which is 25 points. Yeah. So it's almost like a sort of set collection thing as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I tried to really go for. There was one. I think it was Jupiter. I'm forgetting which Roman gods.
That doesn't matter.
But basically, it involved getting cities in every region of the board. There's 12 regions, so you're going across. So you start off in Rome, and your colonists, you move them out to some around Europe, North Africa, Eastern Europe. So you go to like Libya and Syria. And things
Eastern Europe, that was my territory, man.
You were all over Eastern Europe.
You went for the Africa move.
I did. I really went for it. I was the only one just tottering along that sort of North
coastline
African
there,
coastline. Yeah, getting into Libya. And Leptus Magna.
Leptus Magna.
Other various ominous sounding Roman, very Latin names.
Well, there was one that was just it was something like Garrison A or something like that. I can't remember. Somewhere in Germany.
Good old Garrison A. Shock troops, return to Garrison A. Fall back to moon base, Leptus Magna.
Yeah, definitely a Transformer, Leptus Magna. So it was really, like, I really enjoyed the game. Like, it didn't actually play anywhere near as long as I thought it would either. I mean, the turns are fairly quick. You play your card and you do what it says.
Well, when we first picked it up, we did see it as being a very kind of dry game, but there's a lot. There's a lot of options to it when you're playing it. It's not so much about following a specific tactic and trying to win it. It's a big part of it is picking up the cards. Obviously, that makes a huge
massive difference. Yeah, getting those better cards is definitely good.
Sort of the different resources have different values. I mean, one of the first things you sort of find it difficult is building your cities. Find the resources for doing that. The value of the resource determines the difficulty in building the city. So bricks are very easy to get. You don't really need a lot for them, just a bit of food.
But you need a lot of bricks to do stuff, because in order to build houses, you need a brick all the time and the resource. So if the city's a cloth city, you need to have a brick and a bit of cloth to build a house in that place.
I think that was something I was not didn't set myself up very well for in that game. I seem to remember getting to the end and just being like, I don't have anywhere near enough bricks to do anything. I can't build.
See, I kind of almost bankrupted myself on the first turn because I decided to just go for cloth, because I was like, cloth, that's the most expensive thing, let's do that. And built straight away in a cloth city, and then realised that I had nothing after that.
Again, it's not the kind of game where that's going to end your game.
I know, because
you ended up winning it, did you not?
No, I was 1 point behind, and considering like we scored what was it, about? I think Craig won with about 129 points.
Yeah, it was very high scoring.
I think I had 128. But I think there was only like 10 points between first and last place. Considering how many points we scored, that's a really close game.
Yeah.
Like, it was 129 and the lowest person scored 119. That's really pretty close game. But yeah, I would play it again. Like, definitely. It's
I love it. My biggest surprise was finding out. I just assumed it was an older game. But it's made, it was 2013?
2013, it's 2013. It's made by a company called Mac Gertz. That's Gerdts.
Is that the company or the man that made it?
Oh, that's the guy that made it, yeah, you're right. The company's called PD Verlag.
Well, it could be either of those. Those are interchangeable.
That could be the designer, that could be the company. I'm pretty sure PD Verlag's the company. Yeah.
PD Verlag's holed up on Moonbase Leptis Magna with his wasp troops.
Covered in cloth.
My wasp troops! They've been tempted away with a glass of lime cordial and a ham roll.
Right. So, yeah, that's Concordia. Went really, really good. I really enjoyed it.
Top game.
Top game. What was your weird rating system going to give it this time?
I would give that the 6 amphoras of wine.
6 amphoras of wine.
Even though that's a sort of Greek word.
I think the Romans stole most of the Greek stuff.
So you can have your amphoras of wine, your Romans.
So that's 6 amphoras of wine out of some amount of wine.
By that point, you're steaming.
It doesn't really matter. You've had 6 amphoras of wine, so
it's only when it runs out.
Right. So let's move on to the next game, and that's Tiny Epic Kingdoms.
Well, Tiny Epic Kingdoms is a very abstracted civilization building game. Very small game in a very small box.
Yep, plays really quickly.
As by its name you would infer. Basically, you've got 2 to 5 players. Everybody starts with a map tile. So the map tiles are going to be the number of players, and that's basically going to make up the land,
the world that you play in.
The world that you're. Yeah. On the map tiles, you've got various resources that they can produce. So basically, there's food, magic, and ore. Ore is the other one. Each of these has their uses. Magic has a couple of uses. It's quite powerful in war, and also you would use this to upgrade your magic level, which we'll talk about a bit more in relation to the races. Or is for building the tower, which is a kind of objective thing in the game,
which can get you a lot of points.
It can win you the game basically, or it can end the game, getting to the highest level of the tower. And then you've got food for expanding your population.
And we should say that ore, you can also use that in war, but it's not quite as powerful as magic.
Yeah,
magic's the thing for war.
Yeah, it very much is. You've got different actions. It goes round. There's 6 different actions. Patrol allows you to move your meeples, your force around your board to begin with, or your card. They are very much just little cards.
That's all they are.
There's about maybe 6 regions on each one, 5 or 6.
5 or 6 regions.
So patrolling around them, getting your guys onto regions where you want to try and harvest resources from. Questing involves going to other people's regions and trying to get resources from them. That might go in, lead into a war. You can actually go directly and attack somebody, I think. From
you can basically just jump into any space on another map tile, so you could just jump straight on top of somebody.
Yeah, you can do some really annoying moves that way. You can expand your population, again using food. So you just get another meeple on the board, a total of 7 for each race.
Yep.
Again, getting 7 of your men out is that
triggers the end game.
The end of the game. Trade, that was you can
trade one type of resource for another type.
It was a 1-for-1.
Yeah. So you couldn't split it up. So you couldn't trade like 3 magic for 2 ore and 1 food. You had to be like one type of resource for another type.
It's a good thing you're up on these rules.
I
cheat all the time.
I'm the one that's made to read them.
You've got build, again, that's, as we mentioned, building the tower, and research, which allows you to advance your civilization sort of special abilities.
Their magic level, which gives you special abilities,
There's five levels for each one, and again,
that's right,
reaching the 5th level is another end game trigger.
We should probably say actually as well that if you don't want to take one of those actions, you can just take resources from all the spaces you're on. So basically what happens is one player picks an action. So let's say I pick patrol, and then I do my patrol, but Euan doesn't want to patrol, because all the players take that same action when it's picked. Euan can just say, I'm not patrolling, I'll take resources, and he'll take resources for the squares that his men are sitting on at that time. And that's how you get your resources.
Yeah, I find myself doing that quite a lot.
Yeah,
you do often find yourself unable to
do anything.
And there is a certain amount of tactical loss. I thought, but that's certainly for the battles. Everybody has a different race. You choose different races. There's, I think you were saying about
there's about 12, 13, something like that.
There's a good selection of your classic fantasy races. So you've got your goblins. Very quick at expanding. Undead can turn their dead foes into food, which of course they can then use to expand their population. Merfolk can cross the water and get a bonus. Yeah,
they get a bonus when they're adjacent to water.
Right.
When they're fighting people.
Yeah. Well, there were a lot. That was one thing I didn't see in that. Obviously, you didn't always notice water as an area.
But then the merfolk just go, we're using that.
Well, I had the lizard folk. They had the ability to basically move to non-adjacent areas when patrolling, which was quite useful, especially if you got yourself onto somebody else's territory and start darting about there.
Yeah, really annoying people.
Yeah, and also had the ability to either, when the quest or patrol turns were selected, you could basically use them interchangeably. So if it was a quest, you could patrol and vice versa.
And you've got the elves. Craig used the elves, I think.
Devastatingly.
Basically, the elves use magic like it's going out of fashion. And they also, when you're fighting against elves, they reduce the power of your magic, which is pretty devastating. Because magic is
better than yours.
Magic is the most powerful thing in the game when it comes to war. So you basically get war. We'll explain what the war is. You get a number of. There's two 12-sided dice, and there's no 12 on them, I think. It's just, or there's no 1, possibly, I can't remember. Is it 1?
No 12.
No 12. Yeah. There's no 12 on them. There's a sort of peace flag.
Yeah.
A little peace flag.
You're not rolling these dice, mind.
No, you're not. What you do is, if somebody moves into one of your territories, you both take one of the dice, and then you hide it, and change the number to however many resources you want to spend. Or however many points worth of resources, because magic's worth 2, ore's worth 1. And then you reveal them, and whoever's got the highest number then wins that war, and the other person dies. But you can pick a peace flag, and if you both pick the peace flag, then you coexist peacefully in that spot. That never happened in our game, Euan.
No, I never saw that happen. It's one of those things, because that mechanic, that's in something else. I'm trying to remember now where that is also...
I think it's been used a few times.
But the idea of sort of people...
I think it is... Is there not something like that in Eclipse?
It might be Eclipse. I don't think that's what I'm thinking of. But the idea that either, I mean, I guess you have to collaborate before you sort of put yourself into that position and say, okay, well, maybe we could strike a deal.
Yeah.
It does seem very unlikely that two people are just going to randomly choose the white flag. And,
that's true. Yeah, there's got to be a bit of discussion there. Yeah. But I think one of the things about this game is that war can be pretty devastating. Mm-hmm. It's like if you go into war and you really want to win this war, or you spend a lot of resources to win this war. Yeah. You're just going to be weakened for the next couple of turns.
Yeah. And both sides in the war
have to spend
the resources they've committed to the war.
So it can be pretty. It's high stakes stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was a learning curve. I mean, obviously, I got attacked. For some reason, I decided to try and defend with the resources, knowing that probably I would lose, and then I lost those resources. And I thought, well, my opponent had spent all this resources in attacking me. They would have been crippled on the next turn. I could have gone for them.
You could have gone for them, yeah.
So I think there is a certain amount of trying to be clever about.
There's a bit of tactical thing. I played this 2-player, and there was a point where the person I was playing with moved in against me, and I just kind of made out that I was going to win this war, which made him spend like 10 resources or something like that, and I just played a 1. And he just spent all his resources, and then I just went in and slaughtered them.
I think that is part of the game. It does seem to be
totally
built into the mechanics. But there's a lot of depth for such a small game. And it plays so quickly, and you do get. I mean, it's a pretty satisfying game. It's not like it's a really light game where you end up wanting more. It's like you can play a game of this and be quite happy with it. Absolutely.
And there's a lot of tough decisions to be made.
It's quite grueling for a short game, I found. But then again, once it's done, and it's like, did any of this happen? It was. I don't know how long we actually spent playing it. I think
it was only about 40 minutes, something like 45 minutes.
It's a short game,
and that was including me explaining the rules and stuff. So it was pretty short.
So we rattled through it. I mean, the number of victory points certainly is.
It's pretty
not comparable to Concordia. It's not.
No, it's
not.
Other
Euro games.
You don't get 130 points in this game.
No.
Yeah, I think.
You'd be doing well if you got 20.
Yeah, I think the person who won it got 16,
mm-hmm.
And everybody else was kind of 15, 14, something like that. Yeah. But when you score points at the end of the game, like we say, there's certain things that trigger the end of the game. So if somebody gets 7 men on the board, if the tower gets built or the highest magic level is reached by somebody, then the game ends. And you get points for various things, and this is where the tower, ore in this game, is only really feels like it's useful in war, but the only other thing you can use it for is building the tower, but the tower is particularly powerful for points, because I think if you get to the top level of the tower, you get 10 points for it.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of points in this game. But you get points for other things, so you get points for how high up you are in your magic level. You might get points depending on your race. If you get to the highest magic level, tends to be that's some sort of bonus points you get.
I think mine for the lizard folk was bonus points for every meeple you had on other people's territory, on other not your home card, basically. So yeah, you can build up a lot of points that way. You can win it through that way, but I think there's a lot of wrangling within the game that kind of gives it its complexity.
Oh yeah,
using the battles and trying to, because I think I've spent a lot of the time trying to build my resources to build the tower and upgrade my magic.
That was pretty much what I focused on, actually.
I really didn't concentrate on the war at all, to my detriment.
Aye. I think you got pretty slaughtered in that, didn't you? I got picked on quite early on, but I was kind of expecting that.
That's what happens if people leave you alone. You slowly build up, and then they go, "Oh wait, I've left that guy. He might win."
But yeah, so Tiny Epic Kingdoms. That's a good one.
It is, yes.
I'd play that again.
I'd play it again. I think most of these games we would play again.
Yeah, that's going to be.
Would have to be forced.
That's going to be my sort of catchphrase. Unintentional.
I'd play that again.
I'd play that again.
Play that again with a snout hanging out my mouth. Like Sid the Sexist.
So, are you going to give this an arbitrary rating?
I'm going to give this J.K. Simmons Best Actor Oscar for Whiplash.
That's powerful stuff, Euan.
It is. I don't think J.K. Simmons is going to be too happy about it.
Okay, so let's move on to our next game. XCOM, the board game, Euan.
Yes, based on the popular computer game XCOM: Enemy Unknown.
based on the popular computer game XCOM, the computer game.
Yes. Tagline: the computer game.
Right,
For
so
computers.
XCOM the board game, it's almost a misnomer, this, because it's an app-based game, an
Yes.
app-based board game.
Yes.
So you need to have like a phone or, well, it runs on computers as well, so
Yeah.
you can have a laptop sitting in front of you.
I think it's what we've done.
Yeah, we generally do that,
It's
mainly
nice to
because
have
the app drains my phone battery quite quickly. So, but it's a pretty interesting game. It's a cooperative game. So you've got, if you're familiar with the XCOM series, then basically aliens are coming to attack the Earth, and you're in charge of stopping that. Sounds simple.
Yeah. A secret high technology military unit designed for dealing with aliens.
Yep.
It's straightforward.
It's everyday stuff, this. So what happens is if it takes I think you can play this one player, but I wouldn't. So it's like 1 to 4 players, but there are 4 different roles in the game. Basically, each player takes one of these roles. So those roles are the commander, the chief scientist, the central officer, and the squad leader. So depending on your role, you have different duties. So each role plays kind of differently. So the commander is in charge of the budget, and yes, you're basically a financial officer in this. If you're the commander,
You do actually have to tot up the money, the budget at the end of the.
but it's a very important role because if you go over your budget, you can really screw things up.
Yeah.
He's also in charge of the fighter jets, just to give him something else to do.
Well,
You've got we'll skip the chief scientist for now, but the central officer, he's in charge of the app, so he's got to make sure that the app, which is telling you what to do during the game, he's got to make sure he's relaying that information to everybody.
Yeah.
He's also in charge of putting satellites into orbit to fight off any UFOs that are in orbit around Earth. And then you've got the squad leader, who is basically in charge of your military units, so he'll be fighting any of the aliens that land on Earth. All these sort of roles are kind of abstracted, so I mean it's not like the XCOM video game where the squad leader doesn't go onto a tactical map and then go on. It's very abstracted, but it's basically like, it's more like the sort of bureaucracy side of it, like the sort of in between missions in the XCOM video game where you're really trying to build up your base and stuff like that, and then get things running smoothly. So what happens is that the app, at the beginning of the game, you pick a mission and you tell the app which mission you're playing. So you've got a choice of it's like 5 or 6 missions, and then you can pick a difficulty as well. So it goes from easy up to ridiculously max hardcore. So the app will react differently depending on which one you've picked. And basically, so like generally the first thing that happens is that the app will tell you it takes some amount of money. So the commander will take some money, and then the app will then tell you from there what you need to do. So if the scientist would have to draw some technology cards then near the beginning of the game. Now, the chief scientist is a pretty important role, and this is why I've left it sort of separately, because the chief scientist can really make or break the game. If you don't get some of these technologies researched, you can be completely stuffed pretty quickly.
Yeah. I found a cool head on both the budgetary and the science thing that really is needed. Someone that can see where things need to go,
can look into the future.
Yeah, and just at least apply a bit of decent logical guesswork to what needs to be done, rather than just throwing all the money at one thing, or usually themselves.
So while the app's running, it'll basically say something like, put some satellites into these different continents on the board, sort of thing. Or not satellites, or UFOs. Yeah. So you put those in, and then it'll say something like, there's an alien in the base, and you've got this little deck of alien cards that you'll draw from, and then an alien will go in the base. And then at some point, the app will tell you that you can then react to that, and it's usually towards the end of the timing phase, because this whole thing is timed as well as anything else, which causes even more problems, because it just becomes a big panic after a while.
Yeah, well, it tells you when to take your actions.
Oh yeah, it tells you
when
exactly
the
when.
Officer can do the research.
That's right.
Tell you when you can deploy your fighters and all this sort of thing.
But during this time phase, you don't actually resolve any of this stuff. So you just, when it tells you there's an alien in the base, you just turn over an alien card, and that's that done. But the chief scientist, for example, when it says he can research a card, he can take a card out of his hand, put it down, and then assign some scientist to it. this tells the squad leader that he can put some units out, so he can deploy units to defend the base from the aliens or to do the missions that come out. So you have this mission deck as well, and you can put those out onto the different spots on there. And that's basically like a symbol matching game, really.
It really is. I mean, the military one is slightly different to the other I found. I mean, it's the one I've not played, I think.
I've not played it either, actually.
And just in the look of it is different.
It's usually because I don't let anybody near my laptop.
You don't want anyone having to deal with it. You're very precious about your laptop.
I am, yeah. Nobody's touching that.
The role, I mean, the military officer, I mean, as you were saying about how important the kind of the science and the getting the science and the budget right, the military officer I've found in a lot of the games tends to lose through most of the game.
Oh yeah.
They tend to get pretty hammered.
You lose a lot of soldiers in this game, and you have to just keep recruiting them. But this is where the sort of problem comes in. This is why the money side is really important, because everything that you put on the board, so for every scientist you put on the board, for every soldier that you put into a mission or to go and fight some aliens, for every satellite you put into orbit, for every fighter jet you put into a continent to fight off the UFOs there, costs you 1 credit. And considering that an average budget is somewhere between 10 and 14 credits, that's not a lot of things that you can put on. And you might get, 3 aliens in the base every turn, plus a mission that you have to do. So that's quite a few soldiers that you're going to have to put into there. And if you want to research 3 technologies a turn, that's at least 3 scientists. If you want to deal with a UFO threat, which generally there are quite a few of those turn up every round, you might need to put 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 fighter jets in. Yeah. So it does become a sort of balance in the books thing.
Yeah,
and
it's a very stretched budget.
This is why when I played the game last, we lost horrifically.
Now, I've yet to play a game of this that we've lost, so I'd be interested to find out how. And
I lay the blame squarely at Pawel's feet.
Pawel, maybe mentioned here, I was maybe going to do the outro, but Pawel did provide us with some lovely feedback for episode 0. And he's a hardcore gamer.
I've got a bone to pick with him, but I might leave that till the next episode. But at the moment, I'll pick a different bone with him, which is to do with this XCOM loss, because he basically decided that because he was the guy in charge of the money and the fighter jets, that he was going to spend all that money on fighter jets. And it was a terrible strategy. Yeah. I mean, it was like, Pawel, are you going to give John some money to research? No, I want some fighter jets, it's mine.
Oh, God.
He didn't understand the concept of a cooperative board game, I think.
Yeah, and it's a very cooperative board. I mean, I don't think... I think the app kind of makes that element of it where you're all kind of rushing and you have to really work together in that way where you're constrained and you it's probably one of the best sort of co-op, like everybody versus the game ones that I've encountered. I think
everybody's totally involved in it at all times, basically. Well, other than the resolution phase. So after the timed phase, after you're sort of panicking, putting things on the board, trying to deal with all the threats that are coming, the timed phase ends, and then there's just a resolution phase, so the clock stops running. And then you have to use this mechanic of rolling some dice. So generally the scientist goes first, I think, is the first thing that happens. I think you balance the books first, make sure you've not gone over your budget, and then the scientist gets to see if he can research his thing. So if he's, say, put in some upgrade for the fighter jets, whatever the shield thing's called, I can't remember. So let's say he's put that in, and he's put 2 scientists in, then he gets 2 of these dice, which have... each die has a 6-sided die, and it's got 2 success symbols. So there's 4 blank sides, 2 success symbol sides. Yeah. But so he rolls those, and the card itself tells you how many successes you need. So let's say it needs 2, so he needs to roll 2 successes. So he can roll those dice, but he also has to roll an 8-sided die, which is the alien die, and that's where things become it becomes a sort of push your luck thing, because at the start, the first time you roll those dice, if you roll a 1, then you would lose a scientist. So if he rolls those dice and then doesn't get all the successes, so say he rolls 2 blanks, and he rolls a 1, then he has to lose one of the scientists. So then he would only get 1 die, and then he can roll that roll that die and the alien die again, but then it becomes 2 or lower.
Yeah.
Then the next time it does it, it's 3 or lower, or then 4 or lower. So you don't want to sort of push your luck too far, because you end up just losing too many scientists. And it's the same mechanic for everything on the board.
That
it's the exact same mechanic.
All
so
everything you do,
doesn't matter if you're using fighter jets to fight off the UFOs. It's the same mechanic. You roll the number of fighter jets. That's how many dice you roll, and you roll the alien die. And every time you fail on the alien die, you would lose a fighter jet. It's the same with the soldiers. If you fail, you lose a soldier, and it becomes a bit grim. Because you then have to basically, if you lose soldiers or fighter jets, you have to pay for those to get them back.
Yeah.
Scientists and satellites, no, they're out for a turn and then you get them back automatically the turn after.
Yeah.
But that's where, balancing the books becomes even more of a problem. If you've had heavy losses in one round, then you can be really screwed for the future.
It's difficult to build back up sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, once the resolution phase is completed, this is one of the things I quite liked about the app. How you input where the situation you're in at the end of the resolution phase. So if it's gone well or if it's gone badly, it'll be based on similar to the actual computer game with the different continents and loyalty. I should mention that the continents can go into panic. Yeah,
and that's one of the ways that you can lose the game. So after you've done the resolution phase, if there's any UFOs left in any of those continents, you have to move them up on the panic meter. And if 2 of those continents go into maximum panic, then you lose.
That's you done.
And the other thing is that there's also there's a red region, which isn't actually max panic, but if any of those continents go into that red region, you start to lose funding as well.
Yeah.
So you're getting less money if you let that whole thing build up.
Yeah. Well, you put this info into the app, and then it reacts to, and then so the next time phase, it will affect. So if you've done really bad, like if you've got no, like you had a problem with the communications.
That's right. So
and it affected the order of the way things came out. In the time
if you
phase.
leave UFOs in orbit, if you don't deal with them with your satellites, so if they're orbiting the Earth, then they can mess up communications, which actually means that in the time phase, like you say, things can start happening out of order, because generally you know how many aliens are coming into the base before you have to put your own soldiers in. But this, if you've left UFOs in orbit, it might ask you to put the soldiers in first.
Yeah.
And that's bad. That's really bad.
Yeah, there was some fairly hairy time phases. And I was actually just thinking there, the time phase itself, does that represent like a year or something, or is it on a certain amount of time, or is it just that
I think it's just abstracted, really. It's just
I just had
have a few minutes of panic and then you can calm down for a while.
Now and again you go back to the office, have a cup of tea, talk to that surly Chinese engineer from the games.
Phone IT about the printer.
The really sexist engineer who's constantly putting the scientist down in the computer game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He was a bizarre character.
What was his name? Dr. Chen or something?
Possibly, yeah. I think, he didn't look Chinese, but
he was bald, that's all I remember.
I think that's, he had a lot of gravitas to him, but he was a very short-sighted man, I found, he wasn't...
He did have glasses. I've got you there.
And on that note...
yeah, and on that note, let's just say XCOM, it's a good one.
It's a top game.
How many X's would you give it? Careful now.
I would give it 3 big sloppy kisses and a couple of hugs.
Oh.
That's what those X's would represent. That's what the X in XCOM does represent. Kisscom.
Get away from me. Right, let's wrap up board games there, and we'll talk about some video games after a small break. And have some more Dr. Dre while you're waiting. So we're back, and now we're going to move on to the lucrative world of video games.
Do you want to give us a wee roundup of your current Steam adventures?
Oh, my Steam adventures, alright. Well, I picked up a couple of sort of like the puzzle games on Steam. First one being Mini Metro, which is a really addictive game about building subways.
I've had a wee shot of this.
Yeah, you had a bit of a shot at it, and you did a hell of a lot better than I did. Somehow.
I don't know how I managed it. There was a lot of panic moments.
Yeah, so basically, Mini Metro, you basically start with a sort of like those sort of underground maps like you see in London and stuff like that, where the stations are all marked with little circles. So you start off with like just a sort of blank canvas, and I played the London map to begin with, which is the one you played as well. So you've got the river, the Thames going through London sort of thing. And that's the only thing that's there, it's just the river and a white screen. But then you have 3 stations that pop up, and one's a circle, one's a square, and one's a triangle. And passengers will start turning up at these stations, and they'll be circles, squares, or triangles. So that tells you what kind of station they want to go to. So the triangle guys want to go to the triangle stations. So you can then draw lines between those shapes. Now that sounds fairly basic. Like, so you draw a line, and then a little train just starts running up and down it. So they'll start doing that, but then other stations will start popping up at random, and they'll be maybe circles or squares, and those are the most common ones, the circles and the squares and the triangles. And I think you start the game, you can make 3 different subway lines, and you can make them sort of meet, so you can make a sort of hub station sort of thing where
you can get multiple ones going to the same
so you can get multiple trains going to the same station, so you can have like you might have a route that only has, say, circle and triangle stations on it, but there'll be square passengers at those stations, so that train will pick up the square passengers and drop them off at a station where they can switch to get onto a line that'll take them onto a square thing.
As you would in a subway.
And it just starts, stations just start popping up all over the place, and they always seem to, I think this game is evil because it does seem to start putting stations in places that you don't want them.
Yeah.
So,
and you start to seem to get a lot of passengers going for like faraway stations where it's difficult to get to places.
Yeah, that's it. But at the end of every week you get a new train, and you can also pick a sort of bonus thing that you can get, and I think these are kind of random, but you can get things like an interchange, or you can get another line that you can add in, or you can get an extra carriage, so that you can stick a carriage on one of your trains, so they can take more people.
Did you ever find out what if you took an extra interchange, what that was?
See, I've just avoided the interchanges because I just kept panicking about the number
trains,
of passengers that were building up at all the stations. But one of the things about it is that every so often a station will pop up, which isn't a circle, a square, or a triangle. It'll be a star, or it'll be like a semicircle thing.
Sort of like cloven hoof.
And generally there's only one of those stations that will appear on the map.
Yeah.
But the passengers that want to go to that station will pop up all over the place. So you have to try and get them to that station somehow. Yeah. Because you lose the game if one of your stations has far too many passengers at it at once. And I think the first 3 maps, the London, I think it's Paris and New York, they're fairly easy to win, I think. You only need to transport 200 passengers. But I get the feeling, I haven't actually played any of the further ones, but I get the feeling that they're going to get much, much, much more difficult after that. Because one of the other problems you have, of course, is the rivers that run through, like I mentioned earlier. You only get a certain number of tunnels that you can put through those rivers. So crossing the river, you've got to make sure that you have lines that will cross the river, and those lines are in pretty sensible places that are going to take people to decent places.
You have to be pretty efficient with your tunnel use. I think it prompted a few redesigns.
One of the things about this game is that you can pause it and totally redesign your lines if you really feel you need to, which I have done a couple of times because I've just went, this place is a bloody mess. Jesus.
You can move your trains around. You can sort of drag and drop them to where they need to be to try and pick up passengers from it. Maybe if you've got a carriage that's empty, but I got to a point where that was really not going to help. Most of the trains were full. There's nothing you can really do once you get to that stage.
I'm interested to see how far you can actually go with this, because it seems pretty difficult. I think the passengers turning up at the stations, I think that rate gets faster as the game goes on, because it does seem that the stations just start to all of a sudden fill up.
I'd be interested to pluck someone out the civil service, like someone who's involved in like city planning or road planning or something like that, and get them to play this game and see if they're any good at it.
Probably not.
No.
So that's Mini Metro. It's an interesting little puzzle game. It's not actually finished, this game, yet. It's missing audio, which is kind of weird, but it's missing audio. It's $4.99 on Steam. It's by a designer group called Dinosaur Polo Club.
Oh,
and I think early access started sometime last year, and I think they're quite on the way to finishing it now, though.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it does seem like a pretty polished game.
Yeah, it feels like a very full game just for the lack of.
I think really the audio is the only thing that's really
music
missing.
They're going to stick over the top of it, basically.
And trains just cutting about the place.
Aye, yeah.
Choo choo.
What else have you been enjoying on the?
Oh well, I wouldn't say enjoying. I got another sort of puzzle game, which is for some reason it's a coding game, which is called TIS 100,
right.
And it's got a really sort of strange story. Like basically, your uncle died, and your aunt found a load of computers that he was working on, and one in particular that he spent ages working on, trying to figure out what this computer was, because it has some sort of architecture that he's never seen before. So there's a sort of loose story in it, but the whole thing is that it's a really sort of basic thing, and one of my friends told me that it's basically like assembler, the code that you write in it. Right. It's very similar to that, but you get sort of like 12 blocks on the screen, and you can type code into these blocks, and the game comes with this really sort of quite cool sort of PDF which tells you what all the commands are that you can use, and it's written in this sort of really 80s like ZX Spectrum sort of style manual sort of thing, and it's just it's like 2 or 3 pages long, and it just tells you all the code. But you start off with some really basic things. So for example, it'll just say you need to get a number from the input and get that same number to the output, and you can just do that by typing into the different blocks, move this number from up to down, and it'll move the number above it and down to the line below it, sort of thing,
right.
down to the space below it.
Yeah.
And then you can just do that and everything to get it into the output. But then you start getting things like you have to take a number and subtract it from another number and then put that into the output. And that's slightly more difficult, but it was pretty easy to work out, just looking at the different commands that you can use.
Right.
But then it just got even more difficult after that. So there was stuff like, if you take a number, if it's greater than 0, then you have to write a 1 into this particular output, or a 0 if it isn't. And if it's equal to 0, you have to put a 1 into this other output, and a 0 if it isn't. And if it's less than 0, you've got to put a 1 into another output, and a 0 if it isn't. Right. And I did figure that one out, considering I've got pretty much no coding experience sort of thing, but I did manage to sort of like just work through it as a problem solving thing, and get the answers that I wanted. And one thing I will say about this is that when you get the code wrong, it makes these sort of really 80s sort of noises when you're getting the wrong results.
This machine is in distress.
Yeah, but when you get it right and you watch, because it pretty much just like does everything in fast forward,
right? Yeah.
Sort of thing, and you watch all the results coming in at the side of the screen that are the results that you're expecting. There's something really satisfying about that. Like, well, when I watched all those zeros and ones coming in, when I did that, greater than 0, less than 0, equal to 0 thing, when I saw all that coming in, I was just like, God, I felt like I'd actually achieved something. But then I sat there and just go, this is like work.
Well, I think that's the thing. It's sort of getting you into the warped mindset of a coder.
Yeah, just the obsessive nature.
You're enjoying,
enjoying this. Yeah, I felt kind of like, I don't know, just weird that I'd enjoyed that.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility for games to try and teach you something.
Oh yeah. Well, that's one of the things my friend said was that. Basically, playing that game would probably teach me a lot more about assembly sort of style code than actually trying to read about it, because at least I'm working through things myself, and you see it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, it's a practical sort of simulator for. But
I quite like the sort of 80s style of it. I think that really worked, and the sort of weird storyline about one of the things. There's little corrupted files that you can find inside these blocks sometimes that give you a little bit of story, which is notes that your uncle made that you're trying to find, sort of thing. And like one of them was just like, oh, this looks like it could have been made by the USSR, but why is the manual in English and all this sort of thing, and it's just like, oh, it's a mystery.
That's quite interesting though, that they put that sort of thought in. I mean, I imagine there probably is a very rich story in there if you can be bothered.
There may well be, but I mean, the fact that you have to sit and code for hours on end before you can unlock any of it is just kind of like,
Well, that's one for the diehards out there. if you're really into gaming and also coding of any kind, then you actually enjoy that stuff.
And you hate yourself.
as most coders I bet seem to.
Did I actually show you any of this?
You did show me a bit of it, yeah. I mean, it was impressive, sort of like the DOS text and everything like that. Yeah. Kind of, it was
basic commands that you can use.
I was watching you do it, and it's like, so you've spent this amount of time getting a number to go from this box to this box.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt once I'd done it. I was just like, what have I done? But still, I will go back and play it and see if I can figure out some more of the levels and keep you updated on that USSR computer.
How many ones and zeros would you give that?
I would give it 64 ones and zeros.
Right.
And I picked that number deliberately.
Random distribution.
Yeah, a random distribution of ones and zeros, but 64 of them.
Right, excellent.
Yeah. So, what else will we talk about? Would you like me to talk about Dragon Age? Or
I'd be happy to hear about it. It's not what I've seen a bit of this is Dragon Age Inquisition.
Yeah, Dragon Age Inquisition
on the PS4 and PS3, which is a strange prospect.
But I'm playing it on the PC.
You're playing on the PC, okay? Well, all right. So it's
and this is a game that it's now the end of July.
Yeah.
I've had this game since Christmas. And I haven't really played it.
Yeah.
So I decided, I finished Bloodborne a few weeks ago and decided I was going to play The Witcher 3.
We have mentioned before that Chris is a completist who can't complete games.
That sums me up. So I decided I was going to play The Witcher 3 and then turned on Dragon Age Inquisition. Because I don't know how my mind works, Euan. And once I started Dragon Age, that was it. I was just, I have to play it now. Have to play it. And now I'm having, again, another sort of mini nervous breakdown thinking about The Witcher 3 sitting there.
Well,
wondering what's going on.
I think you probably did right by choosing a game and sticking to it.
Yeah, I've decided to stick to it now.
The Witcher probably wouldn't be the one to try and complete first. It does seem pretty epic.
Okay.
And time consuming.
But so does Dragon Age, so I've been considering that I spent 18 hours just messing about in the first area in Dragon Age. I don't have very much hope for myself.
Are you familiar with the Dragon Age series? Have you played any of the other games?
I played Origins,
right.
And in my usual style I never finished it. But I'm determined to finish Inquisition, though. Yeah. I'm going to do it. Right, this is the challenge that I'm making you lay down to me.
I'm laying down that challenge. I've been forced to lay down a challenge.
I am enjoying it.
Yeah.
I started off playing it. I made a guy that looked a bit like a sort of Gallic warrior, bit of sort of like really short ginger hair, but a ridiculous moustache. Really ridiculous moustache. Love it.
Right.
And he's basically walking about the place just being really aggressive at people, which is just quite a fun thing, because I have a bad habit of, like, when I play through these games, I say to myself, the first time I play through it, I'll be really nice to everybody.
Yeah.
But then I'm kidding myself on about this first time I play through it. I'm never going to play it again. So
yeah, you might as well. You
might as well just play it the way I want to play it. So, but yeah, Dragon Age Inquisition. It's about a guy who, you're this herald of Andraste, who is this person, the only person that's capable of closing some mysterious rifts that show up in the world that are spawning out all these demons and stuff like that. And you're basically are one of the sort of founder members of this Inquisition that's going around trying to sort the world out because everything's gone a bit crazy. The church has lost the plot.
Well, the church, I remember from Dragon Quest Origins, was a fairly sketchy entity in the first place.
Oh, anyway. Yeah. And the Templars are just like...
Aye. I think I went out of my way to screw over the Templars in any decision that I made, basically, in that game.
Oh yeah, they don't come across as particularly nice people, no. Which is really satisfying. You've got a Gallic warrior shouting at them.
Screaming in their face.
So, what I'm liking about this game, I've gone for the two-handed warrior, which is something I don't usually do in these types of games, but I've gone for that sort of heavy-hitting, two-handed, weapon-wielding warrior character, and I've been really amused by it because I've got this grappling hook ability, So I'm just, find the mage whenever I'm fighting anything, or find the archer, and then just haul him in and kick him, and then just start laying into him. But I took the whirlwind ability as well and upgraded it, which basically means that every time I spin when I use this whirlwind thing, so every rotation I do, he does extra damage. His damage just builds up and up and up and up.
Right.
So you just turn into a one-man whirlwind of destruction, which is just hilarious. But I have been really enjoying it. I've not really got that far through it. Like I say, I got to that sort of first area, the hinterlands, and didn't really realise that, I should really be going out and exploring other parts of this world. But I sort of hung around in the hinterlands doing all the sort of side quests that I could do and stuff like that, and got a bit sort of like, is this the game? Is this it really? Like, am I just walking about doing side quests, But then, once I realised that, I should really go back to the war room and then check all these other places, and I've started sort of branching out and moving on the main story and stuff. I've actually been quite enjoying it. So I'm kind of glad that I've actually decided to play it. I think if I didn't start playing it now, I probably never would have.
It would just be
I would have just sat there, and I would have, every time I looked at it, I would have started crying, because I'd just be like, why haven't I started you yet?
You can see yourself giving it away in game in a year's time.
Yep.
Never touched.
I think Inquisition is... It feels a lot different to Origins. I mean, I never played the second Dragon Age game, so Origins is the first one.
Having played Origins and I started playing Dragon Age 2, I've still, I've not really played any of Inquisition. The combat system in Dragon Age Origins is very much the kind of like World of Warcraft style one, but it's that slow kind of turn-based, and it was quite grueling. It was a good game, but I think they must have taken that on board for the second game, because that's where the change that seems to be that they're using in Inquisition, where it's a lot faster paced. You actually press the button to attack, so you actually if you're using a controller, you're pressing X.
Which I've decided to go for. I'm using a PS3 controller on the PC. Yeah,
PC. Okay, yeah. I think
it's better that way.
Set up more for console gaming, just because it's got that sort of fast paced sort of combat style to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was something that they introduced in Dragon Age 2, and I started playing it and I was instantly more enjoying the game just for the way that it was.
I think that's what put me off Origins, is I think after a while that combat system really started grating.
Yeah, there was a lot of battles you'd get into, and you'd kind of have to sort of go into the sort of pause menu and try and get people to do things, and it was a lot of fights were a bit of a scramble.
Yeah. I just vaguely remember being really, really annoyed and having to do some fights over and over again because nothing was actually happening the way it should have.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. There was definitely a lot of reloading. What should have been simple battles, you'd be going along, everything would be going fine, and then suddenly you'd take on a bunch of guys you thought you could manage, and everything would just fall
everybody
apart.
Dies.
Yeah. So there were, but it's an interesting world.
Oh yeah, totally. I do quite like that world they've created.
It's a sort of dark fantasy where everything's kind of a bit messed up, really. Although I do always find with these fantasy settings, the thing I find odd is that people always feel obliged to use elves, dwarfs, and just the traditional things. You'd think somebody would come up with a new race by now, just like something off the top of their head. But I suppose they might come up with something and people just be, that's just a goblin.
I think that's the thing. I think I don't think it's. I think people have tried it. I think people have really gone. But then, I mean, how do you go about it though? I mean, it's just like there are your sort of traditional elves and dwarfs and stuff like that. But I mean, like how far can you go to change that sort of body shape and stuff like that, because elves are sort of slender and tall and they've got pointy ears or whatever, and then you've got your dwarves that are short and stocky. I mean, there's only so many combinations of that you can make without just creating a completely like lizard men and stuff like that.
Well, they did make a virtue of the way that they used those races in the first game. The elves being completely subjugated, almost destroyed. They were living in the woods. The ones that lived with humans were basically were slaves. They're
slaves, aye.
And then the dwarfs, their sort of political system was basically destroying their civilization. It was there was interest. They'd made good use of those things, but I do always find myself thinking, it's like, why is it always the same? Can just?
I think I don't know. I mean, I think it's just people are kind of comfortable with that. I think.
I want basketball head creatures to enter into.
Well, you see, but then you're
fantasy
going into comedy, so.
They don't necessarily have to be. A basketball head could be terrifying.
Well, then you're going into horror comedy.
A basketball.
You'd shut up about basketball heads.
I will. What about just basket heads?
Basket head?
Yeah, just a basket. That's a bit more theme. People making wicker baskets.
What if it's elves making wicker baskets? Would that annoy you?
Well, as long as it was a backstory for the basket people who they'd made the baskets, and then the baskets then attached themselves to the
basket
head.
People?
Well, basket heads.
So what came first, the basket or the person?
Well, the elf.
Oh, the elf.
And then the basket attached itself like a parasite to the head of the elves.
But you're just using elves in a different manner, so you've gone completely against what you were saying.
I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah.
And I take back everything I've said throughout the course of this podcast.
You should be ashamed.
I will.
So let's move on.
Yes. Well, going back to fantasy settings and strange use.
I'm going to let you speak this time.
Okay, I'm going to speak on this one.
You're going to tell me about Styx.
Styx.
Is it the Master of Shadows?
Master of Shadows, yeah. This is apparently a prequel to a game of Orcs and Men. I think
that's what it's called, yeah.
What was the studio? That would probably be more useful. We did write all this stuff down. I'm terrible at remembering it. Anyway, this is available currently on the PlayStation
Plus.
Yes. It's for free at the moment. I think it is still. The offer is still up.
I think it's about to run out.
Worth snapping up if it's still kicking about. It's an interesting game. It's a full stealth game. One of the main criticisms I have read in other places is people being very angry about the lumpen combat system. One thing that I pretty much noticed immediately is the fact that that's clearly a very deliberate thing. Your character's a goblin, and you're going around this. I'm still having some trouble with the story, to be honest, and it's part of the way that it's. You start off having gone into this huge tower essentially that's harbouring this world life tree thing, classic sort of fantasy thing, and it's the elves have some control over this tree. They know how to extract its amber and do stuff with it. But this is a resource that humans want. So there's a kind of uneasy alliance between elves and humans, with elves kind of coming off slightly worse, with humans having a stronger military force. You only ever encounter really humans in the game, although I've gotten some of the later levels now, and there's these bugs which you have to sneak about past.
Oh, right, so insects, not like game bugs.
Oh, no. I haven't noticed any game bugs so far.
That's disappointing.
Pretty good for
I
that.
love a good game bug.
They're quite satisfying. No, it's actually quite well designed. I mean, I think the one thing I read, I found that odd that people would comment on the combat system, which is obviously meant to be difficult because you really are meant to use stealth in this game, and the level design facilitates that really well. There's a lot of places, there's a lot of ways, a lot of routes you can take. I think the last level I played of it was a sewer level, which is always a problem in games.
Sewer levels.
Yeah, they are just. I mean, everybody knows. Nobody goes, "Oh, I'm looking forward to the sewer level in this brown first-person shooter."
Brown.
Yeah, because it's going to get even more brown. We're going to go into Brownland with a gun.
Getting quite angry about sewer levels.
I think it's something it's always bothered me. I've noticed that a criticism elsewhere, and it's definitely resonated with me that it's a make or break thing with me. There have been some games I've played that have got to a sewer level. I'm going, oh, this is crap.
Oh, this shit again.
And that's been the end of it for me.
What games are you thinking of here?
Oh, there's a few shooters.
Final Fantasy VIII.
Well, Final Fantasy. Well, I did persevere through sewer sections in Final Fantasy, even though probably that one, the Final Fantasy VIII specifically, is probably one of the most tedious, grueling sewer sections. And it's not even a brown sewer. It's a nice Final Fantasy sewer.
All right.
The brickwork's exquisite.
Yeah.
But it's just long and tedious, and it's basically reusing the same level texture over and over again. as you sort of search around trying to find random hidden items.
A lot of these sort of, particularly JRPG games that use these sort of levels, I mean, that it is really tedious when you're just running about and like sewer levels, especially those things where it's when you've got the water in the middle, that murky water, and you can only run along the sides, and every bit looks the same, and you get random battles every 10 seconds, and that just becomes like, oh Jesus, just let me out of here.
Actually, I do remember Final Fantasy 12 also has specifically what you're saying, this having to go along the side, has a massive section like that is just horrendous.
It's Shadow Hearts as well. Shadow Hearts has a sewer level. Shadow Hearts, one of the funnier sort of JRPG games, and
an beast,
one that we both persevered with straight through to the end, didn't we? Yeah. And it's actually, the Shadow Hearts games, I love them. I think they're great.
Oh, great games. The first one was only I played a bit of the second one. I've also, because I played Shadow Hearts with a friend who also has a large collection of old PlayStation games. We realised that Shadow Hearts was actually a spiritual successor to Kudelka. We cracked out Kudelka, which is also a very bizarre JRPG, strange mechanics to it. Really difficult game to get a grip on, and it's kind of it's this weird horror setting. It's the only JRPG I'm aware of that is set in Wales.
You can't argue with that. I mean, they've gone for something that nobody's done before.
Yeah, I think that's
Wales.
It's an important thing in JRPGs to actually to stand out because there's a lot of dreck.
In the second one, you could go to Scotland. I know that. Yeah, there's a place. I think it's called Queen's Gardens or something. You can go there, and there's just some like. I can't remember exactly. I'm sure there's some sort of ruined tower there or something like that you can go inside. Typically Scottish dreariness that was going on, just grey sky, probably a gravestone.
Yeah.
Somebody playing the bagpipes.
Boring mints shot from queer angles.
So, we were talking about Styx, weren't we?
We have gone off on a bit of a tangent, and I'd love to come back to JRPGs. I think
we should.
Got a rich.
We should do a feature on JRPGs, and
it's definitely one to come back to.
And as much as we enjoy them, we should totally rip the piss out of them.
Oh, absolutely! They're right. They're a game. It's a genre that you find yourself playing and enjoying, while at the same time recognising how ludicrous every aspect of it is. I mean, we'll not get too much into it now, but I know we'll tease us a bit. I know you're not a fan of Final Fantasy X.
Oh,
which I actually really enjoy.
The only good thing about Final Fantasy X was Blitzball.
Oh yeah, well, Blitzball was pretty special. It's a lot the mini games make.
I stopped playing. Well, I did complete Final Fantasy X, but there was a long period where I just ran about trying to find Blitzball players.
Yeah,
just because that was all I was interested in doing.
It has got some of the most awful, cringy moments in it ever. But at the same time, I find myself just bypassing that and just playing the game. You sort of accept it for what it is.
I'm sure I had a nap during one of the cutscenes.
Was that the one where they're at the thing and they're just going ha ha ha?
Oh God, yeah. I think it is that one.
Look it up on YouTube if you get a chance.
Yeah, just like Final Fantasy X, ha ha ha, and you'll find
laughing scene. It's
lots of people criticising the game because it deserves it.
Oh, yeah. Well, back. Briefly to Styx. We're probably running a bit low on short time here. So
Styx. So it's basically it's a stealth game where you're just kind of running about sneaking up on people.
Yeah, you can do like a muffled kill, or you can sort of just get in and stab them and try and run away. He's a nasty wee bastard. Your main character.
Oh, he's a goblin, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a goblin.
Good.
And
That's
he plays,
like goblin should be.
Yeah, he plays to type. He really does.
I do love a goblin.
Yeah. There was a line in the last cutscene that I watched, and it was a human character asked the goblin something like something to do with how you're stepping into a cage or you're stepping into the lion's den or something like that.
All right.
To which the goblin replied, "If I step into a lion's cage, it's to fuck a lion."
Well, that's
apropos nothing. Just
that's brawn level of
yeah, it really is.
retort.
Yeah, I was not expecting it at all, and it was an amusing little aside. But yeah, there's a lot to your character. You can make clones, and you can use that for your stealth. So you can use the clones for distractions. You can put them into wardrobes and cupboards and things like that. And
this is making me think of Spy versus Spy.
Well, what will happen is your clone's in there, and a patrol might walk by, and he'll grab one of the guys and pull him into the cupboard and kill him. So there's like little tricks you can kind of set up like that.
So it's quite a jolly game then.
Oh yeah. Well, you do kind of kill people with a certain reckless abandon that is quite enjoyable.
Excellent.
But yeah, the mechanics certainly, and the gameplay is great. It is as I say, a really full on stealth game, and I do enjoy those kind of games. I think they can be really frustrating, but I do find myself coming back to them a lot, and just over and over again. You do find yourself just playing the same level, trying to get it right. There's time trial, but sort of trophy things you can get for either completing the level in under 25 minutes or not killing anybody on the level, things like that. There's also like secrets you can find around the level. Usual sort of thing. Find 10 coins. If you're like me, you probably won't bother. But then I've been playing with Mungo, so that's made most of the levels a lot longer to complete because you have to find every single coin,
forcing you down every little corridor. To be fair, that's how I would do it as well.
I know, and most people would, and I respect that.
And you deserve to be shouted at you. Right, so Styx. Thumbs up.
5 greasy goblin thumbs.
5 greasy goblin thumbs.
Yeah, they're pretty greasy, covered in
chicken
earwax and chicken skin. Out of 6.
Right, good. So that pretty much wraps up this episode 1, Euan.
Yeah, it's been a blast. This is our first real episode. It feels good.
Yep. I think I've lost count of the number of tangents we may have gone on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but we've definitely ruined a lot of game reviews that we were attempting to do here.
If you've come to the end of this episode thinking, what just happened, then we've achieved what we set out to do.
I think we've done something. We've made you react.
Good. Right, we're going to give out our email address, which is firstplayertoken@gmail.com. So that's obviously all one word, in case you've never used an email address before. That's firstplayertoken@gmail.com. If you've got any questions you want to ask us that we can answer on the show for
comments,
episode
queries.
2, any comments. If your name's Pawel, don't bother.
We already know.
Yeah, we already know. We've been making notes. We're actually going to have a sort of Pawel bingo. We're going to wait and see what it is that you actually say, and then
we may have to dissect this episode before releasing it, so we know what criticisms are going to come our way.
And if your name isn't Pawel, you're wondering what we're talking about, we may get Pawel on the show at some point. He will probably. He's slightly offered to talk about some RPGs, possibly.
He has. It may need some cajoling, but we can. He's got a good knowledge of. Yeah.
He's a good lad, really.
He's a great bunch of lads.
A great bunch of lads is Pawel. So thanks for listening, folks. You can also find us on Facebook at the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token Podcast. That's the ridiculously long name.
Yeah. If you can be bothered to search for that, come and leave us some abusive comments.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't have to be abusive.
Leave us a comment. We'll probably find it.
If there's abuse, it's a bonus. Okay, so thanks for listening, people.
Cheers.
I'm Chris. I have been Chris, and I will be Chris.
I was Euan.
Yes, you were. And this has been the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token Podcast.
Yeah.
Bye.